and they have a message for the president and BP. And we're going to be checking in with Frank Luntz just minutes from right now. But first, incumbents are running scared ahead of the 2010 midterms, and it's all thanks to the rise of political outsiders backed by the Tea Party. Now, we saw it this week as former Nevada Assemblywoman Sharon Angle became the GOP's pick to dethrone Prince Harry Reid this November. We saw it with Nikki Haley, who just months ago was virtually unknown and is now the likely Republican gubernatorial nominee in South Carolina. And before that, we witnessed the power of the Tea Party out in Kentucky when Rand Paul became the Republican nominee to become the next United States Senator from that state. And the man himself, Dr. Rand Paul, joins me now in studio. Mr. Paul, how are you? Welcome to the program. Congratulations. You know, the night that you won, I called it a Rand slide. I don't know if anyone told you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. 24-point victory. We came from 11 points behind to a 24-point victory. No one would have predicted it, you know, but I've always said it. You know what? I think it's the year of the outsider. I've never run for office. I'm not a politician.
You're an eye doctor.
Yeah, but I think government's broken. I think if we don't do something about it, what I really sense and feel in the Tea Party is people are worried. People are concerned for the future of our country, and they see what's going on in Europe, and I think there's a debt bomb ticking in our country, and if we don't do something about it, I worry for the future of our country.
I got to be honest, I have the same worries and the same concern, and I know a lot of people write me and call me on my radio show, and they're saying the same thing. You had a great line, and I talked about it the other day with you. I have a message from the Tea Party. It's loud and clear. We have come to take our government back.
Yeah, I think really government has gotten away. It's gotten into the hands of the career politicians, and we need some reforms. We used to obey the Constitution, but now I don't think we obey the Constitution. I think we need some rules again. One, the Constitution would be good for starters, but two, I think we should have term limits. I think we should limit how long they stay in Washington, and I think we should force them to balance the budget by law. We'll never do it unless we make them do it.
Yeah, it's true, and especially when you look at the population aging. We're told Social Security will be in the red by next year. Medicare is going bankrupt. You know, trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. $19 trillion in debt by the year 2015. It's unsustainable. I mean, this is simple math. This is basic economics.
Well, Federal Reserve Chairman said exactly that, unsustainable. Yeah. And when you have someone who usually tries not to scare the marketplaces by what he says, saying that the debt is unsustainable, that's a potent word. I mean, that really concerns me.
It concerns me too. All right, I got to tell you a funny story. Now, with your dad, who is a controversial figure by every stretch of the imagination, you know that. But I got to tell you something, on economic issues, on fidelity to the Constitution, you know, I find your dad a pretty articulate, outspoken, somebody I agree with on a lot of issues. I probably disagree with him more on national defense issues. You don't identify yourself as a libertarian, though, like your father.
I call myself a constitutional conservative, and when I talk about what government should do, I think the primary enumerated function, the primary enumerated power is national defense, bar none. It's what the federal government should do, and it's what no one else can do.
Do you find yourself disagreeing with your dad sometimes?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I say that, and he would probably agree completely with the statement. So we don't necessarily always disagree. It may be on gradations of things. For example, I think in foreign policy, you can be everywhere all the time, or you can be nowhere. To be nowhere, some people call that non-interventionism.
Isolationism.
Some people call them isolationism. But let's say maybe we're everywhere all the time, and isolationism would be we're nowhere. What if we came back a little more towards the middle and we weren't everywhere all the time? I think for economic reasons, we may have to consider it because we are out of money.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're everywhere, but we got to pick our spots. If the United States is not involved militarily, what would the world look like? You know, it's a balancing act because we don't want to be the world's police force. We certainly don't want nation building. We're not looking to expand our empire here, but we are. But I don't see any problem with expanding the concept, the principles of liberty and freedom.
Right. Well, I think we just have to be judicious about it. For example, I met with 100 GIs recently leaving from Fort Knox, going over to Afghanistan. Their lieutenant colonel was there, and I said, I want to learn something from you guys. You're patriotic, you're taking care of our country, you're doing the things that we all appreciate, but what do you think? Do you think that we're turning it over fast enough to the Afghanis? It's been 10 years. I mean, so I think you can still be a good conservative, believe in national defense, but ask some tough questions. When are we going to start having the Afghanis step up? 10 years is a long time. Let's have them step up. Let's have them start patrolling some of the streets. It's like tough love that we want in our country. People want to we want them to provide for themselves in our country. We want the Afghanis to step up and start providing for themselves.
What do you think is happening when we look at Nevada, when we look at your win? The outsiders of the Republican Party seem to be coming up with some very, very key victories. South Carolina, I think, would be another example. Tea Party supporters. Right. People endorsed by Governor Palin, in your case in particular here, you know, going up against the establishment candidates and beating them soundly. What does that tell you? How do you interpret that?
Something big's going on, really. I went to my first Tea Party a year ago on April 15th. That's when they all got started. I went down to my square. My youngest son was playing baseball, and I was the coach, and I took time off, went down. I thought, well, there'll be 20 people there, and I'll be right back to the game. I got there, and there were 700 people. And I live in a small town. 700 people in the square. Something big is going on. People are marching in Washington. You've seen the marches. Sure. Hundreds of thousands of people. It's an enormous movement, and it's spontaneous. It's not directed by Sean Hannity. It's out there.
There's no one leader. And we were, that April 15th, we were in Atlanta. 25,000 people showed up. I mean, it was a massive crowd. And I think it's for the very thing. I think people are looking for the basics. Balance your budget, live within your means, strong national defense. I don't think people want national security, but this government, one-party rule seems to be going against the will of the people, which is something historically we've never seen before. It's usually government up by and for the people. This is government up by for Obama, Reid, and Pelosi.
Right. And I think they want them to read the bills. I mean, the bank bailout bill, I mean, you're right. People laugh.
Read the bill, okay.
You know what I propose? I propose they wait 1 day for every 20 pages. So if it's a 1,000-page bill, let's wait 50 days and let's read it. They're still discussing what is in the health care bill. Yeah. They're not quite positive what's in the health care bill. 2,500 pages. But the bank bailout bill was printed at midnight, 1,000 pages, and passed by noon the next day. Yeah. No one can read it, and no one knows what's in it.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the one controversy that came up after you won the primary.
Right.
I looked at your statement. When I first saw the news coverage of it, I said, what? He doesn't support the Civil Rights Act? That's how it was portrayed. And you clearly laid out just the opposite, and it was very clear.
I've probably given 400 speeches. I'm not for repealing the Civil Rights Act. It's not part of my platform. It's not part of the Tea Party platform. I see this as a way to try to not just destroy me, but now that I've become a leader in the Tea Party, they want to destroy the Tea Party. It's always been part of their agenda, but let me be very clear. I'm not for repealing the Civil Rights Act, would have voted for it.
But you said that message was there, but they tried to purposely distort what you had said.
Yeah, in fact, I was on sort of a left-leaning network that started this going, and they said all day long I was for repealing it based on the words of my Democrat opponent, but not based on my words. And that's how it all got started. But I've never been for it. It's never been my position, and I don't know what else to say.
Well, probably not much more to say. All right, you got to go to YouTube, and you got to see the video when your dad wasn't a part of one of the debates, and I was up in New Hampshire. His supporters are really, you know, loyal supporters of your dad. They're throwing snowballs at me. You got to see the YouTube. It's great.
I will talk to them. I will talk to them.
Do they disagree with you sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, for example, I think in Guantanamo Bay we have to try them down there. My dad takes a different position, but I joke that at Thanksgiving, you know what? My dad still lets me eat at the main table. So we have disagreements. You may not agree with your dad all the time. We have disagreements, but we do agree in general that government should be very much limited by the Constitution.
I agree with
much smaller.
And let me tell you, we get back to those first principles, the country's going to be a lot better off.
Absolutely.
Rand, thank you for coming. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And by the way, you can also catch Rand Paul this weekend when he joins Judge Napolitano for the premiere of his brand new show, Freedom Watch, on the Fox Business Network, Saturday, 10 a.m. and 8 p.m., and Sunday, 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. And we have plenty more Hannity.